I did whatever was on the
Oh, you did?
calendar invite. Yeah.
Where did Gordon go? Did you see him on the way past? He's gone downstairs. Yeah, let me get him.
I think he went to the bathroom. I think he went to the bathroom. No, maybe not. Oh, okay. I only have to pay attention.
Toot, 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 toot. Did the Domino's guy get taken care of, or is he still around?
Oh, he's gone.
Gone. Okay.
We got the elevators to be like, what was the elevator? I'm like, we know where you're going.
I suppose he's already been paid. Hello, Dodd.
Hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you.
Talking to, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You are the.
I'm John Henderson. Yes.
Oh, nice
This is
to
my
meet
show. You made it.
Yeah. No.
Right
I
on.
made it. I saw you. You sent me the invite, so I was gonna check it out.
Well, normally we're a little bit more prompt, but we just got our speaker and got plugged in, so we'll have a show before too long.
Awesome. Cool. Awesome. Appreciate it.
Who else could be Dodd?
Yeah. There's not very many dots.
That's right.
didn't leave us anything.
What? Plates.
What about it?
I don't have any plates for the pizza. So we're gonna have to steal them or use paper towels.
I used to live next to the plantation in Tennessee. And every autumn they go get their fellow mates to sleep.
That's fine.
You guys are doing all right? Like your hands like animal, you know. Just. You know, the luxury ones, like so. Oh no, all the money goes towards the life.
Good to see you. Yeah. Everyone maybe have some pizza now while we're waiting on the show to start. If you would like.
They're here, so. Either go east or west. Next.
If we're gonna go across sideways across the street, right in front of my car.
Goofy Texas.
I'm the CEO of Plus Music, and I am excited to share what we do. We want to be super useful to you guys. We want to be a part of your game development tech stack, and we'd love to help you out to make.
Hello. Hello. There we go.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to VGMU. We'll be starting the show very soon. If you'd like to take a seat, go ahead and get a drink and pizza while we're waiting. But thank you very much. I didn't mean to make you stop talking if you wanted to do that. Although I am going to talk at you in just a minute. Let's make a badge. I definitely need something to drink first.
That's the coldest I've got.
Excellent. That works just fine. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for coming out on a Thursday night. My name is John Henderson, and I'm missing the She-Hulk season finale. And if anyone's seen it, don't spoil it, please. If you don't like it, I don't want to hear about it. You may have your reasons, but I don't share them. But again, all the things you could be doing on a Thursday night, you've chosen to spend it with us on eve of the second weekend of ACL. If anyone wondered what's going on in downtown Austin, that's kind of it, even though we're a whole kind of river away from Zilker Park. There are lots of people in town for that and have no idea what there is to do on a Thursday night in Austin, so they're milling around 6th Street and crowding up the streets. Yeah, that's what they call those, the things with the cars in them. But I am John Henderson, I'm your host, and I am here to waste some time because we always have people coming in late. Thanks everyone for getting your pizza, drinks, and your badges. We will have a Q&A session after our speaker, and also an announcement from our sponsor. And we do have a sponsor for the beer and pizza tonight called Plus Music, and we'll get a plug for them in just a minute. We very much appreciate that. As well as Gordon Walton, always faithful for making all the deals to keep us fed and watered, as well as Richard Johnson for being our barman. Yes, thank you very much. But bit of history lesson. Guess what happened 25 years ago on September 24th? It was a video game launch that started in Austin, and it's a game that's still around. What do you think? Yeah, it was 1997. Say what? No, that was Dallas. Yeah. What? That? See? Ultima Online. See? Someone's paying attention. Thank you very much. Good. Guess what happened like about 2 weeks later out of Orange County is a game called Fallout. And irony being, there are way more people employed in the Fallout franchise in Austin now than there ever is for Ultima now. They make Ultima Fallout 76 over at Bethesda Studios. There's still some people who don't realize that, but yeah, it's an Austin project. It got a lot better after Wastelanders. Another thing that happened just a week ago, again, I'm in the news business, so I figure I need to tell people that this stuff happened, but Meta announced that they acquired 3 more studios, and 2 of them are based here in Austin, Armature and Twisted Pixel. Twisted Pixel had been owned by Meta for a while. They just didn't admit it. If you wanted to apply for a job there, you had to go to meta.com, so we all kind of knew, but Armature had done the VR adaptation of Resident Evil 4 for Capcom, but now they are all acquired by Meta. So if anyone is looking for information about other events going on in Austin on the regular, there's the atxgamemakers.com. They've got a calendar of events that happen. There's actually a lot of events going on throughout the month of October, all the way through Unite on November the 3rd at their, no, it was the 1st. Yeah, whatever that Tuesday is. The Unity office in East Austin is basically just doing an open house. So, and actually next week downtown is the O3D Con. You know, remember when Lumberyard, when Amazon made the big deal with CryEngine to fork their project and make a whole new game engine? They gave the whole project away to the Linux Foundation, so now it's called the Open 3D Engine. There are a lot of, again, mostly Austin project, a lot of graphics programmers were working for Amazon on that project, and now they're having a convention here to promote the use of the free tool to make very high-end networked 3D computer games. It's worth pointing out that Amazon had multiple projects based on Lumberyard, and they launched one of them. Yeah, New World. Yeah. Think about that and make your own conclusions on that. We like to have this one thing called the Job Haves and Job Have-Nots, where I point out to people who are looking for work and then also identify those who represent companies who are hiring. We'll start on this side of the room. Who would like to identify themselves as looking for work on this side of the room? Anywhere? Dot? Sure, just say who you are, what you're about, and if you have, what's the best way of contacting you.
Yeah, hey, I'm Dot. I'm trying to figure out what the next step is. I've had a lot of experience in broadcast, particularly like entertainment journalism, things like that. Work on YouTube, different social media platforms, some game marketing. So if you're interested there, you can find me. It's dotsinsights@gmail.com is usually a good way to get to me, but you can always find me on LinkedIn as well. So,
All right, thank you, Dodson. Connor?
Hi, I'm Connor. I wasn't prepared for this, but I am a.
Remember to breathe. Yeah.
No, I'm a game programmer. Mostly comfortable in Unity right now. And yeah, I just moved to Austin.
We had a great showing on Sunday at our portfolio posse. You met a couple of people, and I think one of them may give you a mock interview before too long. Hopefully. Very good. Tyson.
I'm Tyson. I am a composer for games, mostly work on action RPG kind of games, sci-fi based games. I'm a contractor, so I'm always looking for work, I suppose. Most of it I just wanted to introduce myself because my main priority is you haven't been here.
That's an important thing, honestly. People get out of practice with that. Again, we've had this whole thing called the pandemic, which we're kind of not all the way out of, that really just blew everything out of the water. There used to be events going on all the time in Austin. We've had to come back from almost nothing since the spring. But the good news is people really want this to happen. So people, and just leaving the house and going to a place where you know there are other people, especially people that you don't know and can't account for, is an act of bravery. So again, thank you for being brave tonight. Anyone on this side of the room looking for work? Well, actually, go ahead, Colin.
Hey guys, I'm Colin. Music, games, also contractor, so always looking for work. Love the media. I have a business coach on
Very good. Okay, now how about this side of the room? Jake. All the audio people know about the Austin Game Audio meetups, correct? Maybe you need a Tyson to tell you because he knows. Yeah, right on. Hear that? Very good. A guy named Aaron Brown is the audio lead at Arcane, and he has own meetups in South Austin. I think I guess the next one's going to be at the Easy Tiger on East 7th on Sunday. Right on. Very good. Saw a hand up over here. Who else is looking for work? Go ahead. You been in Austin long? Oh, goodness. I didn't mean that as a confession or anything like that, but I hope you like being here, if you're here at all. Well, that's one thing, yes. Sure. Well, like I said, and thanks for pulling your own chair off the rack there. I'm sorry we didn't get you enough for that. But either of you or anyone that just came in while I was talking looking for work and like to identify yourself? Since you're already up, go ahead. Yeah, your name and what your background is and what you're looking for and how to contact you. In web development, is that what you said? Okay, very good. Sorry. Thank you. How'd you find out about the show? Oh, hey. Very good. Someone's got to pay attention to all this stuff. Again, the world is very complicated. I should also ask, how many people here have not been to one of these shows before, VGMU? That's about half of it, so that's what you're dealing with tonight. So we're all glad you came for these kinds of things. Here's the thing about meetups, though, is that not everyone you meet in Austin is going to be helpful to you, but at least they'll treat you like a person, which is, I don't believe is true about everywhere that there's a creative and technical sector. So I think that's an advantage that we have, but only if we actually get out and meet each other. And the best way to do that is just to do it, but also be ready for other people that you don't know and don't work with. And even though, again, we've been, huddling outside the plague for the past 2 years, we get out of practice with this whole human interaction thing. But no one will get any better without some practice. So I encourage everyone to look for every opportunity to practice as much as you can, and you can get good at this stuff. So how about I introduce our speaker? Granted, hopefully she's ready. I'll say this about our speaker is that the first time I met her and subsequent discussions thereafter made me feel good about being able to give advice because I gave her some and she actually did it. Granted, all the success she's had since then has pretty much been on her. But again, great story that she wants to talk, and I'll leave it up to her. Please welcome AJ Smith.
So I'm going to go ahead and put this mysterious cigar box here, and I'm going to allow all of you to wonder what's in it until I actually get to it. It's a huge development tool. That's your only hint. So, my name is AJ Smith. I came to Austin for a opportunity that ended up spiraling out of control, and I ended up making a game. So is the monster me or the game? That's up to you to decide. Should we do the sponsorship thing afterwards? Okay. So we have... Oh, the secrets. Whew. All right. So I don't want to spoil too much. I'm just going to go up and go ahead and give you all a disclaimer. This is not advice. This is my personal journey. So there are steps here that I would not recommend that you follow, especially developing a chronic illness, for example. But I do want this to be ultimately a story of triumph. So, I was born in 1991 as the only child to my family. They had actually given up on the idea of having a child after several years of attempting and failing. So when I came around, they say, you know, shouldn't put all of your eggs in the same basket. But they only had one basket, so here go the eggs. I don't have any memories of this particular photo. I was perhaps too young to have been developing memories at this point. I believe the person that is holding me is my eldest cousin. Why am I blanking on his name? I'm a little nervous. It's the first time I've done any kind of personal or public speaking since the pandemic, so I am a little bit rusty. Teddy, my cousin Teddy. But I would like to think that I still kind of exhibit the vibes here. Unfortunately, all those plans to turn me into a wunderkind were met with several challenges. I wasn't a popular kid. In fact, I know it's really hard to tell from this image. Rocking those boot-cut jeans and this solid red sweater and showing off this really cool mushroom in my grandmother's yard. Ooh, neat. I was bullied pretty viciously. Some stuff that I'm still trying to work through today, sitting here shaking like a leaf while I try to talk, right? I was labeled as poorly behaved because I had ADHD. But once I got that diagnosis, that label of poorly behaved kind of disappeared. I got pretty good grades, which was kind of going for me, at least, despite the fact that I never did my homework or studied because of the ADHD. But thankfully, I made it work. About middle school, early high school, it was impressed to me that I had to get into STEM, science, tech, engineering, mathematics, if you're not familiar with that acronym, if I wanted to have job security and money, which was told to me as the most important thing in my life. As a kid, I just had to take that advice at face value, right? I was really creative and crafty, but I guess I just had to put that aside in order to be a good adult. I don't have a whole lot of images from this era, so you'll have to take cosplay photos instead. This character is Nights into Dreams, the Wii make for a game that was originally on the Saturn that has a bit of a cult following. These particular pictures were taken at Anime Boston 2009, which happened to be the same weekend as my senior prom. So I went here instead of going to my senior prom, which should say a lot about me. It was about this time in my life that I stopped being able to sleep for no reason. It started as an occasional frustration, but would evolve into an every night occurrence. I started falling asleep during class, not having any energy, and if I didn't have anywhere to be, I would be in bed. This didn't seem to alarm anyone, and I suppose it's because they were brushing it off as just, oh, she's a teenager that's staying up too late playing video games. But in reality, I was in bed staring at the ceiling all night and not knowing why. I started my college education at Manchester Community College, that's up in Connecticut, studying engineering sciences. My health was worsening, and I would keep up my studies regardless. On the left here, you see my friend Noah, who will come up later in the story. I met him through his then girlfriend at the time, and we would have friend gatherings for homebrew campaigns of D&D, which is actually how we which morphed into like these prototype plays of these tabletop games that he was coming up with, because he was always coming up with games, and it was always a riot. After I graduated Manchester Community, I started going to Central Connecticut for a 4-year degree in molecular biology. And I tell you what, a 4-year degree is no joke. Those last 2 semesters were brutal. We're talking hardcore organic chemistry 3, cellular biology, and this isn't like the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell kind of stuff. This is more like memorize the entire multi-step chemical reaction that occurs in the mitochondria to make it the powerhouse of the cell. And on top of that, this was the worst health I had been in, because that whole sleep thing was still going on. I didn't have any energy. I was falling asleep, get this, on my commute, which is dangerous. Don't do it. You could kill somebody, including yourself. In fact, it was so bad that an entire semester of my work was thrown out because I could not get out of bed to do my finals. So, I finally get to the end, though. I am war crawling, you know that movie trope where and bombs are going off and it's crazy. But I was motivated to finish it off, despite all of the things that were making it impossible to do. So here I am crawling on my stomach, and I go up to my faculty member and I ask them how to get a job in the industry, 2 weeks away from graduation. And she says this: you need at least a master's to get a job in this industry. She didn't actually laugh at me, but she kind of stifled a laugh. I had to prove them wrong, right? Because I'm put in the time, put in the money. I have at least a 4-year degree. I'm in STEM. All of those things that were told to me when I was a kid, they have to be true, right? So I'm going to prove them wrong. I started applying for jobs. Radio silence. So I'm complaining about the whole job hunting process, as you should probably, because it is really stressful. And I have a friend that goes, hey, there's some openings at my current job. Do you want me to hook you up? And I was like, any job is a job at this point. What is it? And she goes, it's doing customer service for Blizzard. And I'm thinking of like all of those times that I've seen those videos, you know, the minus 50 decade pay or whatever, the angry raid leader videos. I'd never played any World of Warcraft in my life, but I knew the reputation, right? And that's what I was getting into. And I was like, job's a job. It'd be kind of cool to get into the, like, get a game job. That would be kind of bragging rights, even though it's not STEM, but, you know, I had no job experience before that point. So that's when I was able to move from Connecticut to Austin. And this was a significant amount of like social relief for me, because in Connecticut, when you have someone who's nerdy or eccentric, it's kind of like you're met with a lot of like awkward silence and like, yeah. But in Austin, and especially working for Blizzard, I felt like I had finally found my tribe, which might be some problematic wording, but it feels accurate, you know? I could be myself and not worry about how people were thinking about me, how people were like making judgments about me in the back of their head, which was really helpful when I was still, you know, pretty sick. There was one particular day that at the time felt pretty inconsequential, but it was so huge in retrospect. Every year at Blizzard, there would be a career week where customer service and QA, if I remember correctly, could attend roundtable talks with different game development sections. I went to a lot of them, and one in particular really surprised me, which was production. I'd never heard of production, video game production before this. I wasn't expecting anything, because like, I'm just like signing up for things, like I'm interested in game dev now. And when they were talking about what they do during their day-to-day stuff, they were talking about documentation, communication. And I was like, those were the parts that I really liked doing in molecular biology. There's a lot of like writing down repetitious stuff and being able to like communicate it to different levels of like experience in that field. And so I walk away from that particular roundtable telling myself I would pursue it if the opportunity ever arose. Blizzard always tried to make it seem like there would be opportunities to move out of customer service into development, which may have been the case if, well, we know Blizzard has a little bit of a reputation. Let's say that we kind of broke up mutually. I don't want to dwell on that too much, because again, this is supposed to be a good story, I swear. Then I ended up doing customer service for Rockstar for a hot minute. That was even rougher, as you might imagine. And I was only there for like a month or two. Eventually, I actually got fired because I empathized too much with a customer, which is strange feedback, but okay. I mean, I don't really like working here anyway, so bye. But the same time that I was fired, get this, I had a cold and then an ear infection. And I had fire ants in my apartment. They were in my bathroom. They were in my coat rack. It's like, oh, did you like have a whole bunch of food out and they just kind of like took over your kitchen? No, they weren't even going for the food at this point. On top of that, my parents are like, so did you get a new job yet? You went back into science, right? Did you get a new job in science yet? And after all of these things, I just woke up one morning and I said, screw this. I made huge improvements to my life during that summer. I found a lot of material online because at this point, with all of my health stuff, I was going to doctors. They were giving me medication. None of it was working out. So I started taking power into my own hands, doing a lot of research online, which can give you mixed results, right? But I did a lot of reading because that was basically all I could do from bed, right? And I found out that people with fibromyalgia, which is what I ended up getting diagnosed with, tend to have a gluten sensitivity. So on a whim, I went gluten-free. And would you believe it? I was able to sleep at last. Don't ask me why gluten prevented me to sleep, but here we are. I have Fitbit and Eat This Much also on this slide because in 2 years' time, after I met Henderson and I went to ACC, I lost 50 pounds in 2 years. Fitbit didn't exactly tell me how to lose weight, but it's a great way to track. Eat This Much is definitely what you go to if you're trying to lose weight or gain weight or, you know, bodybuilder or any of that stuff. I highly recommend it. Hoft, I didn't technically go to Hoft. I showed up on Henderson's doorstep because, he had posted to Reddit because I was doing research, right? I'm trying to figure out what to do with my life, what to do with my health. And as far as the research to do what I wanted with my life, I ended up finding a post that you posted on Reddit. And I'm like, hey, can we meet? And I don't remember the exact interaction other than me going, wow, you're really tall. and then I was like, that was a terrible thing to say. And you were telling me how Hoft didn't have a track for production. You didn't. But you did tell me to look into ACC. So I did. And I had actually before, when Blizzard had that career week and they were talking about production, and they did have some educational benefits that I was going to use. So I did end up going to ACC, and I actually really liked it, despite the fact that I had spent 4 years in school prior and being like, a master's degree, I'm never going to spend another day in a classroom. So I ended up betraying myself, and thank goodness I did. I learned a lot of technical stuff, a lot of group work. Here's some pictures from before I lost weight, about the same time. That is a slide from Rich's Intro to Gaming History class. It's one of the first semester classes, and it says, "Now make the cartoons edgy," which feels a little bit like a mantra at this point. So I go through school, I'm doing great grades, I'm getting good sleep, I'm exercising, I'm losing weight, I'm on top of the world, and we get to Capstone. So Capstone is an interesting thing. Just a quick overview for those who might not be familiar. A lot of the game schools around here, I think all of them do Capstone. St. Edwards and UT and all that. Yeah. So there's a semester or two that's dedicated to simulating a game project. And as with all college projects, they have their bumps. One of the ones that was really significant for this particular project is that we discovered that forced perspective in 3D is a lot harder than you'd think. We actually struggled with that for quite some time. But we're chugging away on it. We're doing the best we can. We've got some art here by our systems designer and a mock-up of what we were able to get into the engine at some point, and it just wasn't doing it for us. You can notice how the characters are kind of like really far away from the counter, it feels, but when you actually look at it in engine, they're like right up against it. How do we fix that? So while we are trying to figure out how to fix that, the world ends. We are not only trying to figure out how to make a game project as a team of, novices, but we are also trying to figure out how to work remotely, which even experienced people were having a hard time with. So, something happens. I want to see, by show of hands, who recognizes this character. No shame. You're going to show your age, but no shame. So, I'm on Twitter one day. Actually, let me back up. In 2018, there is this small German game dev company that got the rights to work on a new Leisure Suit Larry game. Yeah. And I was obsessed. I was actually obsessed with the original games, but, there hadn't been a new one in like a decade, so. But then they came out with a new one. It's absolutely amazing. If you like point and clicks, I definitely recommend it. If you like raunchy humor, obviously, I recommend it. But one day on Twitter, somebody by the username Sprek4 posts a funny little meme that I graciously did not include in this slideshow because I think a lot of people would not quite get it. But I saw that post and I was like, hey, stranger with the same weird fascination I do with this niche video game series. You want to be friends? And so she said yes. Actually, I think technically you asked me if we could be friends. Yeah. So we added each other on Discord, and it was quite a significant moment because at that time, I don't want to speak too much for your story, but she was in Maryland at the time, and she is a very, very talented artist. And as you might imagine, there's not a whole lot of art opportunities in Maryland. It's a lot of like government, medical, that kind of stuff, tech. And she was working a QA job for a financial tech company. And she was looking to get out. And I was sitting here in Austin like, do you want to get into video games? Because we happen to be looking for a third roommate. And I've got connections, sort of, as much as a student can have connections. And through the process of getting to know each other, I was whinging about my current capstone project, and she actually managed to help out with a lot of stuff out of the goodness of her heart. And so she gave us this concept art, the black and white image, that managed to rocket propel us into figuring out a lot of our problems. And that is what turned the capstone project into a success. Not to disparage my capstone team, they did amazing work, but sometimes when you're a novice, you have a novice skill set to work with. So, you know that QA job that I was telling you about? I actually ended up taking it over. So she moved down here into Austin, and about this in August of that year, and I ended up taking her job because they were trying to push her into more of a project managerial role with Jira and making tickets and making sure that people do it and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, hey, that sounds like production. Can I have your job? So we ended up basically transferring her job to me. And then we start going into a dark place again. That job was toxic. There's many stories that I could go into, but I will summarize the relationship with my boss as this moment where I stood up for myself, where he was kind of aggressively correcting me on a mistake, and he said that I should watch my tone, Missy. I ended up reporting him to HR for that and several other infractions done to me and my coworkers. And that company's response to that problem was to put me on another team who was also toxic. And they didn't actually relieve me of my duties from the old job either. So I was ending up doing 3 people's worth of work. I was basically redoing their Scrum methodology. It was basically a help desk. So I don't know why it had to be more complicated than tickets in, tickets out. The boss that I was then, not my boss, but my boss's boss, took issue with the fact that I was wearing a tank top one day. And we're not talking spaghetti straps. We're talking like at least an inch wide. Nothing particularly revealing, at least in my opinion. And then he also took issue with the whiteboard behind me. Because it's remote work. They can see this whiteboard that I was using for a game jam at the time. And I heard from my boss that the C-suite executive didn't quite appreciate that. And I was like, okay, so we got some life-work balances here that are not being respected. And I knew that my time there was limited. I ended up knowing that I was not going to be there for long. I ended up taking out a loan because I was like, I am tired of waiting for the opportunity to work on a game. I am just going to make a game. So with my new roommate, we started working on a little project that we are still working on to this day called Love Tap. It's a little bit, a lot inspired by Leisure Suit Larry, but it's going to have a little bit of a twist on it. Erotic point-and-click adventure. And I ended up incorporating my studio, Tropical Heat Studios. Now, this was the only thing that we really had on our plate at this time. It was kind of a slow burn project because we knew it was going to take a while. But that's not what I took the loan out for. I took the loan out for a little bit of a smaller project that we had started shortly after, where we were like, okay, so I've got a producer, me. I've got an artist, Angela, and I have a designer that I know by the name of Noah. Yeah, that friend from college ended up having an incredibly successful career. He did all sorts of cool things, both in animation and game design. And I knew that he was still in the game, and I was like, hey, do you want to make a game with us? And he was totally on board. So what do I do with a producer, an artist, and a designer? Notice that there's no programmers here. We make a card game. So it starts off in its earliest prototype phase as a 52-card standard playing deck. The different suits represented different body parts. Oh, I actually meant to ask, do you want to take a break before I get into the nitty-gritty of the game design? I'm doing fine? Okay. I might. My mouth is very dry. Okay. Yes. Okay. This is the cool part. But we're going to have a quick break first.
All right, if people can make their way back to the seats, we'll get started again. So one thing that Mr. Mike Panoff pointed out to me is that, all right, hold on. Ow, my foot. That works in summer camp, but not here. Yeah. Uh-oh. Well, that's what I was worried about. Was there anyone here in the audience? Sorry, folks. Was there anyone here that was looking to hire people? Because I kind of forgot about that. Yeah, how about that? Nellie. Okay. All right, thank you. Were you the other one? Yeah. Why don't you say something, or would Angel like to say? Yeah, either one of you. Right.
Oh, okay. That's all for me then. So Tropical Heat, my company, is looking for, this wouldn't be a full-time position. This would be like a every so often kind of gig. Anybody who has a work schedule that would allow them to take time off for conventions. We need a slick-tongued salesperson for our card game. Your time at the convention would be paid for, food, time, etc. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay.
I just need somebody who's better at selling than I am.
You can get better with practice, but
Yeah.
good. All right, to anyone else? Ash.
I work for Avocado Games. We're a publisher out of LA and Indy, California. We're looking for Unity porting programmers who have experience porting games to console Unity, graphic designers. I'm here for a while.
Yes. And if you don't pick up that job, I might have someone to recommend. Anyway, yes.
What is it on right now?
It's probably on Unity, but probably for PC, but they wanted to port for another platform. Yes. Right. That's what indie publishers usually do for indie teams. Anyone else looking to hire? Okay. Well, like I said, we actually do have a sponsor for tonight. Usually Gordon pays for it all himself, but we did have someone to do that for us. So please watch this from our friends at Plus Music.
Hey everybody, this is Nick Venti. I am the CEO of Plus Music, and I am excited to share what we do. We want to be super useful to you guys. We want to be a part of your game development tech stack, and we'd love to help you out to make amazing games. What Plus Music does is we provide soundtracks that are turnkey into a game. So we built a Unreal and a Unity plugin, and if you're building on one of those two platforms, you can use Plus Music to soundtrack a game in really seconds. So let me show you around what we've done here. This is a vision of our front end, and you can log in. I'll send logins to everybody. But we have a discover section. So what we've been doing is licensing music. We get the publishing and the master side of every song, and we've curated a bunch of music for you guys to find here. If you don't find what you're looking for here, you can go to our search engine, and we have a bunch of really interesting ways to search for music. We've broken this down into emotions and genres and intensities and different styles of songs. And how do we get to have that kind of granular search? Is that we built an AI that takes every single one of our tracks and puts it into what we call as like a game pack starter kit. So like, I'll just show you. So we have right here a song from Charles Fauna, At Night, great track. This is an electronic piece, but when you click on it, you'll notice that each track has all these segments down here. What is this? This is the AI basically pre-segmenting and turning the music into a game soundtrack out of the box. It's really cool. So we get every song's got a vocal track, an instrumental version. We're going to do stems in the very near future. We have what we have, and then if you just click on here, you have like the highlights, the lowlights, the failure moments, the victory moments, the low backing tracks that loop, the high backing tracks that loop. And you can add those right into a project and directly into a game. So the way it works is you find music you like, you plug in either the Unity or the Unreal plugin, and then once you're ready to put that into your project, you just add the project down here, injects it right in. I'll just give you the fast version. But now you have every one of those songs in your project manager, which is an ID that just goes directly into the game so that the game itself can have music piped in really quickly, And then you have the ability to make last mile edits and continue to iterate the soundtrack as you go, all out of the box. You don't have to load in Logic. You don't have to get an audio person. You can have a soundtrack and you can iterate it on yourself over time. You can go find a million soundtracks. You can try them out in your game. So as soon as you're ready to launch your game, your soundtrack will be perfect. And our licensing model is just way different than I think you're ever going to experience. So what you're going to see is a back end that's like this. You won't see all the sides. This is my admin view, but you guys know you're all developers, you know, all that stuff. But what you have here is a bunch of music. You can find what you're looking for, and there'll be pricing that'll be surfaced in this view. There'll be a pricing here, but you can get great music. These are all like amazing artists that are out there working. There's composers. There's not just pop music, but down to like, you know, medieval style music. We have everything. And you can license it based on the amount of use that you're going to have. So just think about it like that you can buy what you're going to use, you can get the game in market, and you can get out there and get your thing going. The last thing I'll say is that we are hiring. We are actually hiring a technical director for this company. We want somebody who builds games, who loves games, and wants to help this integration be even better for game developers. So if you know anybody who's a high-level developer, has built and shipped great games, AAA, AA games, we are looking for that person and would love to chat with them. Thanks so much. We're Plus Music. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Plus Music, and thank you for listening to our pitch. So, again, we don't normally have sponsors for this event, but if anyone would like to have like a few minutes to talk about your product, why don't we come back to this speech here? Thank you very much for paying attention to that. Again, I'm sure you didn't expect commercials.
I gotta get set back up.
Yeah.
Actually, I shout when I have a microphone. While I try to get that set back up with my slides, I am finally going to reveal what is in my box of what's that box from Dune where that you stick your finger in and you feel.
What is that called? It's full of
paint. Yeah. I always blank on that. I'm actually going to pass around this cigar box and show you what's inside. And if you could pass this around, you can rifle through it, you can mess them up, you can put them out of order, you could steal them, whatever you want. So what you'll find in that box is our prototype cards that we were making throughout the process. You'll find some really simple ones that just have a name and some numbers, and then you'll find some that have names, numbers, a description, and all sorts of weird notes that I certainly couldn't translate today, but it certainly was helpful at the time. How am I going to exit out of this? Get out of here. I think I successfully closed my tab of slides. Keep forgetting which order it is. I wasn't ready at all.
Yeah, I'd offer to help you, but I'd probably make it worse. So I don't know your laptop at all.
Oh, you just gotta let me destroy it on my own terms. And
Well-
I'll fix it on my own terms.
Well, I mean, this is kind of about practice in public speaking, but
Oh,
that
absolutely.
looks pretty good. Yeah. Very good. All right. Back
All
to
right.
work.
Ta-da! So, like I said, we started out with a 52 card playing deck. You can kind of see the remnants of that in the index cards in there, where it was just like, here's a suit, I guess that's a body part, and then the number is associated with a point system, and you would orient them in kind of a way that would represent how the body parts would go together. And this was originally, if anybody's familiar with the furry fandom, this was originally going to be a game where you would make... And then a bug showed up. Aw, and have another audience member. Awesome. What was I saying? So you're probably sitting there going like, okay, so you got body parts and you've got points. How do you play it? Well, that was kind of the problem, right? So we have the deck and we would pull from it, and then we would have this kind of interesting balance where you couldn't change out a body part once you put it down. So if you wanted to use like a 3 for a head, then you wouldn't be able to use that 7 that you pulled later. So there was kind of an interesting game in trying to figure out if you were going to use what you pulled first or try to buy time for a higher point card. But the problem with the game at that point was that when you got to the end of the game, it was like, okay, well, there's no point to adding up the points because it's pretty obvious who won most of the time. So what we have here is some of my early GDD documentation. So we eventually decided to make it a little bit more general audience and go from making fursuits to making a furry monster, which I think a lot more people, like general audience, could wrap their head around. And we ended up kind of coming up with this comedic, dark comedy, cartoon kind of approach. Addams Family, Invader Zim. What else? There was a huge list that we had of inspirations. Courage the Cowardly Dog. That was a huge one. Yeah. So we have a game that is really, really rough around the edges. But I am already writing a GDD because at this point I am like, we got something, but we got to write it down if we want to iterate on it. By the way, Noah is not in the picture just yet. It's just Ange and I putting together this very rough game. So at this point, I'm like, oh, we are almost there. We have almost an interesting system. I'm going to need to call on somebody that has a little bit more experience pulling a game together than I have. And that is when I called up my friend Noah. And he's like, okay, let's get started. We start making spreadsheets. And these spreadsheets are going to have all sorts of different statistics for building out what is a very basic card game. We're going to take those body parts, we're going to give them a cost. What do we have to pay in order to play those? Because you can just play them from your hand, right? We need voltage points, victory points at this point. Because that is what is in the game right now. It's the number associated with the body part. A type. Now, when we say type, we're thinking of, like Magic the Gathering, even Pokemon, where you have like elements basically, and it's gamified. It's part of the game flow, and an effect. Also, when we're talking about Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, we're talking about what does it do other than just have points. We have allies, which was one of the biggest changes that Noah brought into the game, because he was like, you need to make lovable characters. I'm like, but I want to make the lovable character. He's like, no. When people play Pokemon, they'll put like Marnie in their deck, and they don't care if they win or lose. They've got to play Marnie, their favorite character. I'm like, okay, fair enough. We'll have to come up with characters, but sure, I'm on board. And experiments and tools. Now, this is an interesting one that as we went through development, there were 2, so I have 3 up here, but there were actually 4 card types. 2 of them were experiments and tools. We ended up merging those together because we couldn't come up with a decent reason to keep them different from each other. And that's one of the takeaways that I want to have for this talk, is that when you do game design, sometimes the answer is to simplify, not complicate. Speaking of complication, we started building out our spreadsheets. A lot of spreadsheets. And this is only a very small selection of what we actually have. In fact, we don't even have the final spreadsheets up here that we actually used to create the cards, because they're everywhere. We have so many spreadsheets. We have spreadsheets for days, just like we got index cards for days in there. Each page in that spreadsheet would book would be different explorations of effects, types, statistics, all sorts of simulations. We did all sorts of exploration. This is where most of the work happened. Not in an engine, not in paper, in spreadsheets. It's not pretty, folks, but it's worth it. But speaking of pretty things, while Noah and I are working on this, Ange is doing some style exploration. Because we had our inspirations, you know, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Addams Family, etc., etc. But we wanted to have our own unique look. So I was just like, hey, I'm going to throw you a couple of bucks. That's not actually representative of what I paid her, but I did pay her for all this time. Come up with something that is going to be quick to draw, cartoony, enjoyable to look at. And we see Frankie, who we ended up naming several months later, over here on the right, that we have probably, I've had her draw over like 5 different times because he ended up being such a good marketing piece. So while all this is happening, this is actually my side project to those toxic jobs I was talking about earlier. It was about this time that the whole whiteboard and tank top incident happened. I got that loan, I deposited it, and I said, bye, Felicia. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, but right now, I'm going to make a game. I quit my job, and using the loan, I was able to keep the roof over my head and food in my mouth while I worked full-time on this game. Also paying my designer and my artist. Going back to being ugly again, we have the prototype problem. So as we send the cigar box around, you're looking at some of the very, very, very early prototype material that we actually made. And here's the problem. Noah lives in Atlanta. It is the middle of a pandemic, and we're trying to make a physical card game. We tried a couple of times to actually play test against each other via webcam. Didn't really work. We had to ask each other what was on our table at any given time. So, in what might be a contradictory methodology to prototyping a game, we actually made a digital prototype for our physical game, when you usually make physical prototypes for digital games. So what we see here is a screenshot of my file with Nandeck, N-A-N-D-E-C-K. This is a really cool piece of software if you want to make card games. Basically what it does is that you can programmatically tell it to take a spreadsheet and tell it what columns go in what places on the card. So you can see here I have my prototype card where it tells it what body part it is, the energy cost, which is not something that actually exists in the game anymore. Energy is now points instead of a cost. But we have a description, victory points, and all that stuff. Nandeck is a very powerful piece of software where you could very well make your final assets in this program, but I was like, I don't care. It doesn't need to be pretty. It just needs to be functional. Saves a lot of time if you don't get into the weeds of the prettiness. Nandeck actually came as a recommendation from one of Angela's friends who, if I remember correctly, actually makes quite final-looking cards with it. Like I said, I'm not interested in making it pretty. That's Angela's job. So, these are pictures of the different kinds of prototyping that we had. So we have a picture here of those cards that are going around where it's just like, well, we made a physical prototype, but it's not really doing us any favors. In the middle screenshot, we actually have Tabletop Simulator, which is another piece of software that I highly recommend if you're doing this kind of stuff. So basically, this particular picture was taken when we actually had art assets, but we did this throughout the development cycle. So we could actually play it. We made the pictures in Nandeck, had it spit out the cards, and then we would throw it into Tabletop Simulator. Fairly easy process, all things concerned. And then once we felt fairly solid with the game mechanics, we went back to physical playing again, because that's what it's going to be in the end. If it doesn't feel good in reality, then we didn't really make a card game. So there you go. And again, another takeaway from here. Don't worry about making it pretty. Just make it work. Because, again, making it pretty is a multi-step process. Look at these like terrible Photoshop doodles I did to try to figure out how these cards are going to be laid out. And I'm just like, I don't know, the body part art goes here. We're going to have art that represents an experiment. And then we're going to, the statistics for an assistant somewhere on here. On the top right, we have the template that was provided by Print Ninja, who is who we went through for printing the actual product in the end. Amazing company, super great customer service, highly recommend. And then I had these Photoshop drawings, and then I actually went down and like really pinpointed how much space any given part of the card was going to take. And then I handed it to Ange, who would figure out the finesse of it all. Okay, I know where things go, but what does it look like? And these are the different steps. The 4 on the bottom left are the body part arrangements, and the one on the right is the assistants. And I didn't put experiments on here because it's basically those two without the special stuff on the side or the top. You have to design everything, down to the box it comes in. So there were lots of different works in progress that I could post here. I went with the earliest one I could find, where we had a sketch of the box front and what we wanted to do with the electricity kind of like spreading out across the box. We actually would print these out too, physically tape them together to see what they would look like in physical space. Shouldn't have brought one of those. I still have them all over the apartment. And then the grind. Frankenfur, as it currently exists, is 123 unique cards. That means I have a giant Photoshop file that has every single illustration and every single card title and its type and the frame and the description and the text and the voltage points for a total size of 162,000 kilobytes. You'll notice that on the timeline there, it's a lot of arrows, because when I left my job, this was what I was doing. As soon as Ange would finish the art of any particular card, I would take it, put all that data together, send it to print. Not necessarily as they were coming. We had to finish them all before we could print, but like a assembly line at that point. So we're chugging through it. We're getting all these cards done. And I get somebody knocking at my door. Now, when I was working on this project, I was applying to producer jobs. I wasn't relying on it, but I figured I would when I gave myself downtime, because it's very easy to overwork yourself when it's your own project. So I applied to a particular studio in February while I was deep in this work. I started to finish up my queue here. My queue is starting to empty. And they come back to me in April. And that's how I got hired by Steel Wool Studios as an associate producer. If you're not familiar with Steel Wool Studios, they are the current manufacturer, designer, developer of the Five Nights at Freddy's series. So as far as their timeline is concerned, they came out with Security Breach later, was it 2021? Yeah, and it was actually kind of funny because Security Breach, if anyone's familiar with it, came out to a little bit of a mixed reaction because fans loved it, but they were also like, it's really buggy though. And so there was a lot of excitement and disappointment. And one of the reasons I actually applied to Steel Wool Studios in the first place is because their executive producer, Ray, penned an kind of response to the fandom, apologizing for the state that it had released in, but ultimately very positive for the next steps. And when I went into my interview, I told, they give you the trite question of, why do you want to work for us? And I was like, I actually got to interview with the guy himself. And I said, honestly, your addressal of the fandom was a masterclass in production. And from what I understand, the position that was listed was actually for being a producer specific to the animation industry. And apparently I blew his socks off so well that he was like, actually, I want you to work under me. I am super elated. I wake up every day thinking whatever powers that might be that I had that opportunity. So while I'm waiting for our finalized cards to print, I'm starting on my job here, and I'm also telling them, by the way, I'm gonna be going to a couple of conventions, so I'll need some time off to sell my card game, which they are super supportive of. Eventually, we do end up getting Carnivore. I think the turnover ultimately was from submission of my files to arriving at my doorstep about 2 months. And then Herbivore arrives 2 months after that because we finished Carnivore significantly earlier than Herbivore. It's just the nature of it. And so that is how we made Frankenfur. And all of this was a very elaborate ploy to tell you that we're going on sale. If you use the code HALLOW22 on our website, you will get $10 off the Woodland bundle, which is both of them. And you already get $5 off because if you buy them individually, it's $25. If you buy them both, it's $45. And an additional $10 with our pumpkin friend here. And to close this out, I'm going to steal one of the tools that the producer that I report to at Steel Wool does during our sprint retros, and I'm going to share a couple of memes. This one is a general one that I think we can all agree with. I always go to this one. The next one is a little bit disparaging, but it was helping me in the process of figuring out how to word my cards. And finally, the one message that I want you to all walk away from tonight. Don't chase your dreams. Humans are persistence predators. Follow your dreams at a sustainable pace until they get tired and lay down. That's Frankenfur for you, baby.
Would you like to take questions now?
Absolutely.
Why don't we do that? Take your
I am
hand up.
going
I'll
to
come with you with the microphone. Who would like to ask EJ some questions?
Where'd that cigar box go? Cool. I timed it perfectly.
All right, let's go over here.
How do you do order fulfillment? Do you mail them out yourself?
Yeah, so most of the orders that we've fulfilled statistically are when we go to conventions. So I have a point of sale system, Square, yet another one that I would recommend if anybody's trying to handle, payments in person. They send you like a free little dongle that you swipe cards with. And then if you buy on the website, we use, PayPal, Wix's payment processing, and then we just send it out ourselves. We're not licking stamps, but we are like constructing the boxes, taking the inventory, and just shipping them out all ourselves. Eventually, we will end up, hopefully, scaling up that. I won't be able to do that, but we aren't there just yet.
I have a question just to point something out, really, and you glossed over it, and I know you didn't want to talk about that fintech company that gave you a lot of grief, but that was where you learned Jira, correct?
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Kind of important for what you do now.
I didn't actually. So, if I were to give critique to Austin Community College's game program, I would say you need to teach their students Jira, because there is the production class, but they don't. They show you like how to manage projects with like, what is it? Microsoft Project. Yeah. And yeah, exactly. And it's like that. Nobody uses that. But when it came to learning Jira, that was entirely self-learned. I didn't have anybody actually teach me how to use Jira. I just banged my head on it until I figured it out.
Okay. So maybe the job made the software available, but you had to teach yourself how to use it.
Yeah.
Right on. A little bit.
Yeah. You showed me the basics. What's a ticket?
Well, let's put another fine point around it. You had completed a 4-year degree in a field that you ended up not wanting to go into, but then you went to ACC, which kind of blew my mind. You weren't the first person at that point when I first suggested it to you that had done that. Because again, the idea of going to university first and then a community college, except that that's actually one of the better scenarios for it.
Yeah,
Treat
it's
it like
actually what I would
post-grad.
recommend. Not to be cruel by any standard, but a 2-year doesn't really prepare you for what life is going to throw at you. That's it's kind of an interesting conversation point, and I'm going to be sharing one of my hot take opinions, but one of the reasons why a lot of employers will look at student projects from college and be like, well, okay, and not really accept it as proof of your ability is because when you do a capstone project, they don't really give you the chance to fail. Like, you really have to be working towards blowing it up to actually fail. What were we
Again, it's a
talking about?
2-year program, but
Yeah, it doesn't really prepare you for what you have to do when you know that risk is on the line.
Yeah. Well, there's also the thing that everyone in production knows, that everyone's contributing individual parts to the game, but there's things called the pipeline. And the pipeline leads to actually getting it in engine. And what opportunities do you have to actually learn how that works?
Yeah.
Other than the capstone, which again, you're getting ushered through it. Honestly, I thought this was kind of like an inspirational story, you know, the whole idea of basically kind of floundering around for quite a long time and then basically hitting a point where it was either hit the wall as you see it coming or sidestep it and take a big risk.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else has done that. I haven't yet, but
I did kind of breeze over just how bad it was because, I mean, honestly, it is kind of a vulnerable thing to talk about. But yeah, I was close to being bedridden for several years, and I thought that was going to be my life. After a couple of years of being basically bedridden, that I wasn't going to do anything. I was probably just going to go for disability and just watch TV for the rest of my life. But I didn't want that for myself, and only through a particularly, I wouldn't call it like violent because I'm not a violent or angry person, but I really had some piss and vinegar in me to turn things around. So I didn't want that life for me. It was like, all in all, about 10 years. My 20s were just spent sick. I still do suffer from a lot of fibromyalgia problems to this day, but not like I used to. And that's why it's really nice that I work at Steel Wool Studios, because they're very understanding.
yeah. Well, everyone came here for a reason. Is there any particular things that you would like to have learned that maybe didn't get touched on today? Not to say that she would be the one to answer it, but
Open book.
we just want
I
to
will
have a
answer it to
dialogue.
the best of my abilities.
It's very possible. We
I
might
love
have
your
actually
shirt.
picked something up.
Point and click representation right there. He's wearing a
Grim Fandango.
Grim Fandango.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was blanking.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Walter.
So you mentioned in the talk that you all kind of transitioned from a kind of a fursuit theme to mad scientist creations, and I was wondering if, I guess getting to the fursuit point, was that always something you all had planned on, or did you prototype multiple ideas before you settled on that, or was it this just kind of always knew the initial direction? Or?
When we were really early in the ideation phase, it at the time was the only context that we could wrap our head around the idea of, like, okay, there's different body parts. Okay, in another world, maybe it was dolls, maybe it was I can't fathom what else, because once we landed on mad science and Frankenstein idea, it was just too perfect. And I don't even know what, like, inspired that idea. It was just one of those ideas that you just wake up one morning and you're like, oh, I know.
Are you trying to get some retail partners to maybe sell it in stores as well?
Yeah, so I was in the middle of, well, I was starting the process of reaching out to some local game stores here for carrying the game. And then I had to put that on hold because I was preparing for this talk.
Oh, sorry about that.
I mean, I did this to myself. I was like, wait a minute, this timeline doesn't work. But so we have spoken to Game Castle over in Wells Branch, Dragon's Lair, Mothership, and so there's some others. Emerald Tavern. I'm really hoping to get in there. But basically what we did is we went over to those stores and we're like, hey, would you be willing to carry, like, an indie developer's game? And they're like, yeah, here's my business card. So I have to follow up with those conversations.
There's always a process, I suppose.
Yeah.
I work in sales, so this is my sales.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about entering more of the B2B rather than the D2C? Like, right now it sounds like you're going direct to consumer rather than business to business. Have you thought about going into the trade show circuit and going more into, like, the gaming app development? And then also Calendar Club is a local business in Austin that has national distribution, and they sell card games. Just letting you know that. They're the Go Games and Toys in the mall.
I'm not taking
I used
notes,
to work in
but
them.
I should be.
I got you.
Ultimately, the answer to your question is yes. It at this point, a lot of how fast we can move on things and how fast we can grow depends on capital.
Yeah.
So that's the only limiting reagent here. I'm just using a term from my molecular biology days, but that money is what is pumping the gas or pumping the brakes in any given state.
You should message me on LinkedIn, and I'll talk to you about what it means to do net 90 POs with a factoring company, because it's dope.
I have no idea what you just said, but I'm interested to find out.
Yes! It means you can sell things from the future.
I want to time travel.
Yes, you can get paid now. It's pretty great. Yeah. Anyway,
Sales
that's
to me, baby.
that's my sales pitch. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
People really win at Capital Factory.
So you mentioned with some of the companies you worked for, school projects not necessarily being as well received. Do you have any tips for maybe presenting school projects in a better light?
By all means.
So I've interviewed lots of startup programmers, and the reason school projects are frowned upon, or not frowned upon, but why they don't carry much weight is because you don't know who did what on that. And as John said, they're very curated, and you don't know who did what. What's much more important is doing a project on your own where you're the only one who worked on it. And you can show that during an interview. You can bring up a demo, and don't give them an executable to play. No one's going to do that. It has to be YouTube video with highlights, because they're going through lots of resumes and they need to see those highlight videos. So you have a highlight of what you did, and then you want to explain what you did and specifically what you worked on and some of the challenges you did and how you overcame those challenges. But yeah, that school projects is just complete crapshoot. What, someone might understand what other people did and claim it as their own, but as an employer, you have no idea that they actually did that work.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Frankly, one of the things that I did with my student project, the capstone, is that especially when you're a producer, it's hard to make a portfolio for production, because you're like, I helped it happen, yay. So basically what I did was, one of the things that producers do is put together a postmortem where you talk about like what did you do well, what did you do poorly, what would you do differently in the future, and I put together a write-up for that, for my particular capstone, demonstrating what I was doing in an objective way. So it's less about the project and more about what you did and being able to convey that to a potential employer. Especially, like, speaking from my position where I might be hiring, a programmer sometime in the future, and a student came to me, I wouldn't write them off because they're a student and all they have is a student project. I would be like, okay, but what did you do? Like, show me your code. Talk to me about a problem that you had and how you overcame it, that kind of thing.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those things actually require self-awareness, though. That's a little difficult for some people.
I mean, that's the biggest thing in game development is self-awareness.
Well, a lot of really smart people have no idea who the person is in the mirror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of my toxic position,
Sure.
toxic jobs, I've worked with some very, very talented software engineers. But, I did not like working with them.
Yeah. Again, we don't need to repeat everything.
I see a sigh over there. Shared experience.
Well, did you get that TikTok?
Oh, yeah.
Do you have that loaded?
I don't know if I could pull it up quickly.
Probably not quickly.
I can try, though.
Would
if you want to waste some time, I can try to pull it up.
Yeah, actually, so, well, here's the thing. No one has made a TikTok for something I was associated with, and it's kind of amazing. Like I said, on Sunday, some colleagues and friends of mine gathered together at the Game World's camp space in Anderson Square, and we were there for about 3 hours, and we had about 13 reviewers and 13 review seekers, and this young lady, came in wearing that, and you'll have to watch this very carefully because it's a 10-second TikTok. What are you trying to do? Yeah. Yeah. So this is actually the parking lot. You can recognize the auto parts store there. She just wandered out there and did this. Well, again, it's only 10 seconds long. So again, she did that. And again, she was wearing this dress, and I did not realize that I was in the presence of royalty, because she came in and she worked the room. I think she basically got a review from everyone there, and everyone was just like, her list of talents is huge. She has 21,000 followers on her TikTok and 25,000 more on her Instagram. You have to work for that. Yes. Basically, my friend Justin Andrews was one of the reviewers, and he was like, you don't need to be going to apply for jobs. You need to hire yourself out as an agency. And as it turns out, now people want to do that. She is a senior about to graduate from St. Edward's University. She didn't name where she goes to school, but that's it. Again, I'm completely selfish here. No one has made a TikTok for anything that I did. But this was something that I just did because I had been doing it quarterly when I worked at Hoft Institute, which is how I met AJ. But it stopped becoming part of my job. So I just did it because no one else is doing it. and there are opportunities for people to meet bona fide game developers and sit across the table from them for a few minutes and actually, treat each other like people. And this is what she got out of it. And her caption further down is something about how she went home and happy cried for 2 hours. Yeah. So I just thought that was adorable. Thank you. Any other questions for AJ before we close it all up? All right. How about one more? Okay.
Hello. So a couple of things before I ask my question. Firstly, my name is also Noah, which is kind of funny. And I'm also a game designer. And that's my friend Alia. She's actually on my team for our senior project. She's pretty cool. But my actual question that I wanted to get to was you said that a lot of your development was during the pandemic and you're making a physical card game. How did you go about play testing that externally, or did you ignore that?
That particular screenshot from Tabletop Sim is actually from 2 friends of Angela's that volunteered.
Oh.
So when it came to play testing externally, it was just like, hey, you like card games, can you test ours? We can't really give you a physical version because it doesn't exist yet, but I could give you a copy of Tabletop Sim.
Okay.
You can give it a shot.
So did you provide did you give them a key or something for Tabletop Simulator, or did they have it?
So the way that it works is that if you are hosting the game, so like you would host any kind of game, like I'm the person where everything is like taking place on. You can open up the game and populate. Are you familiar with Tabletop Simulator?
I've never used it before.
Okay.
Yeah. That's why I'm interested, because I never
So we'll go
thought to use it.
all the way to basics. So basically, when you open up Tabletop Sim, you start a room, right? And then you're sitting there as the owner of the room, and you can populate whatever you want into the table. You can put meeples, like little character models, or you can put like D&D miniatures. But one of the things that it allows you to do is to upload custom cards. So what you do is you format your image as a sprite sheet of sorts, and then you tell it the statistics of your sprite sheet, like it's 5 cards wide by 7 cards long or whatever, and then it'll import them as cards. So all you have to do at that point, once you put all your cards into the space, you just add people to your room, and then they can play it.
But they need like a copy of the game, right?
No.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they
That's
just
really
join
empowering.
the room, and
That's
it's right
awesome.
there.
Huh. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. So as far as play testing goes, it was free. As far as getting the physical game,
Yeah, well, that's like $15, right, or something.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
yeah. So I'm sitting here realizing that I didn't actually dedicate any of my time to actually tell you how the game is played. Which I'll take as feedback for the next time that I do this, wherever that might be. Basically, so you have the 4 body parts, right? And you have to get one of each. Like if you have an arms card that represents 2 arms, right? So you need 4 body parts, and you need to bring them to life, right? Like Frankenstein's, like he gets electrocuted by the storm, and it's alive, which is actually a game mechanic. You have to declare it's alive when you complete your monster. And every single card in the game can be used as energy to bring it to life. And that's actually how many points you have. So you bring it to life and you bank points to win. And one of the interesting things, at least in my opinion, about the game, is that when you have like Pokemon or Magic, you have dedicated cards as your resources. So you draw something and it's just resource. It's either a land or it's an energy, and that's all it does. But every single card in Frankenfur can either be used as its type, where it's a body part, an assistant, or an experiment, or you can use it as energy. Yeah. So when it came to Tabletop Simulator, there were a couple of different playtests that we did. We did a couple of playtests where you actually got, as the playtester, you got dictated how to play the game, which was a simulation of how we would demo the game at conventions when we were physically there. And then in other playtests, we actually gave people a copy of the rulebook, which is in the physical games. In fact, just recently I updated the website so that the rules are actually on our website. Highly recommend. Especially for people who can't read the 2-point font that even I can barely read in the instruction manual. So we playtested both ways. Did I land? No, unfortunately not. So actually, yes. So you can script a game. You can. It actually does have very powerful coding tools. I don't know what languages it uses. Do you know?
Yeah, you might need a programmer for this.
Yeah. Again, I'm not a programmer. What? Sorry. What language does Tabletop Simulator use for scripting? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Tabletop Sim does have that ability. It is not an ability that I took advantage of, though. Number one, because I'm not a coder. Number two, because I wanted to make sure that you could play the game without guardrails necessarily. This will probably change in a couple years when we actually do hopefully make a digital version of it, but it wouldn't be on tabletop. It would be its own app.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time, so how about one more round of applause for AJ Smith? We will be coming back here to this space in December, second Thursday of the evening. Go up on their meetup page, and that's all been announced. And I think we may want some people to take the pizza home because Gordon doesn't want to do it. But everyone else, yeah, he might do that. In any case, good night.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, one last thing. I'm sorry I forgot to mention this. I need to figure this out right now. If you parked in the garage and need a slip,